Turn right onto Dover Road.
Meters across the road and at a 90-degree angle and up the street, blocking off Billock Drive, a yellow police tent out.
Continue for 1.5 miles.
Officers in bright high-vis jackets have stood guard all night, protecting the scene while others are trying to piece together exactly what happened. The eyes of the nation turned to Plymouth, which is in shock this morning as reports of a gunman emerged, confirmed hours later by Devon and Cornwall police as a shooting with several victims. Dog walkers and runners enjoying the late Thursday evening sun told me what they saw.
I was out at home and I was just about to come out for my run and I heard some loud bangs actually, and then I seen some helicopters.
4 or 5 helicopters that have flown over my house, really low down. They landed not far from here, but obviously they've taken off now with like the victims and injuries and all that to hopefully get them sorted out.
Slowly, details are now emerging on what is without doubt one of the darkest days in the city's history. A total of 6 people are dead. 2 females and 2 males died at the scene. That's where another man believed to be the offender was also found dead. All are believed to have died from gunshot wounds. Another female treated at the scene for gunshot wounds died a short time later in hospital. Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport MP Luke Pollard is trying to reassure the community.
I want to say thank you to all the local residents for staying safe, staying indoors and following instructions. And thank also those residents who have been supporting one another at an awfully difficult time. Think of the families, think of our city at this time, and let's make sure that we are supporting one another.
Nearby Ford Primary School and St Mark's Church have agreed to open their doors to the community. Police trying to reassure residents that this is not terror related. Nick, we're expecting more grim details later when police are expected to talk to the media.
Andy Valentine reporting, and I sense we'll speak again through the course of this morning's show. Let's come to this other story, which we're doing right at the top of the news agenda, but for this horrific events in Plymouth. Of course, condolences if you're coming to terms with that. But we go to Afghanistan, and it would appear around, I can't get the exact number, but around 600 UK troops will be sent back to Afghanistan to help an estimated 4,000 UK nationals and former Afghan staff flee. The Ministry of Defence has confirmed last night. Now, the experts predict there's roughly 90 days before the Taliban would regain or recapture Kabul. As I've told you, about 90 days. Shall I share a couple of other numbers with you before we get some expert comment? At the height of the war, the UK had 9,500 troops in Helmand province as part of a 130,000 strong NATO force. The US had 15,000 troops in the country as recently as 2017. But here's a number that needs to hang in the air. 457 British personnel were killed, and many thousands more have suffered life-changing physical and emotional injuries from which they may never recover as a result of the conflict. I don't have the bravery to do what those men and women have done, but I can say this. Was it all in vain as they go back? And if you, like me, have listened on the radio, you've looked in your newspapers and you've seen on TV that this country now, as is very accurately put in one headline, hurtling back to the dark ages. 12-year-old girls being rounded up to be shipped off as jihadi brides. I put those words in quotes because I don't see anything with the word bride there. And that's what we've left behind. Let's get some expert opinion, political opinion in a moment, although indeed he did also serve as a senior military man and felt it himself. But let's go to General Sir Richard Barrons first, who was former commander Joint Forces Command, served as one of the 6 chiefs of staff leading UK armed forces. General, thank you for coming. Sir Richard, thank you for coming on. Lord Dannett, a man I'm sure you know and know well, writes in The Sun today, we're all used to washing our hands during the pandemic, but US President Joe Biden has taken it to a new level. He's washed his hands of the Afghan people. He's not mincing his words. Is he right? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I fear he is, because this week we've gone through a situation that was disappointing and then serious and is now a crisis, and it is an avoidable crisis.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
Which was a reasonable one, was that the West, led by the US, would support the Afghan government. We've after all been supporting that for 20 years. Long enough and well enough so that a deal would be done with the Taliban about how to bring the war to a close. There would be a negotiated settlement. But by deciding to leave to
Keep right.
the anniversary of 9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. The Taliban have sensed that they could win this by fighting, and the Afghan government has lost confidence and to some degree capability. And now we're in a situation where, as you say, within I think a few weeks, the Taliban will be around Kabul. There'll be 4.5 million very distressed people in Kabul, and this will feel much more like a surrender than a deal that really favours the best interests of Afghans.
So Richard, that's twice you said the word deal with the Taliban. Some of my listeners might be looking at the radio with a degree of amusement. Can you actually deal with people such as this?
Well,
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
they will be resented and resisted, and that there are large numbers in cities in particular of Afghanistan who really do not want to be led by a Taliban government. They wanted to be part of a power-sharing deal in Afghanistan, holding sway where they do. Now they sense they can take charge again.
Lastly, Sir Richard, you're a military bloke. This has started with 600 pairs of boots on the ground or whatever it is. It's not going to end there, is it?
Well, I fear it might, because the 600...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
Contingents from many other Western countries will be only big enough, equipped enough, and authorised to go and get our people out. They'll not have the mandate or the equipment or the muscle to take a part in the fight for Kabul that's coming.
During our time together, thank you, General Sir Richard Bowser, former Commander of Joint Forces Command, listening down on the political aspect. Mr. Barzell, now he's also a senior military man, but he's Conservative leader for the North East, now former Defence Minister and chairs the Defence Select Committee. You read a relatively very powerful piece in the Mail on Sunday, I think it was the last weekend, Mr. Elwood, in which you said that there were schoolboy errors, with the expression you used. What were those errors, Mr. Elwood?
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
Two very simple ones. Firstly is understanding Afghanistan. This is a complex tribal country. You can't impose a Western solution, run things from Kabul and expect it to work. That was the first mistake that the Americans, Don Rumsfeld, insisted on doing. The second one is that it took us 5 years to start training an indigenous security force, the Afghan security force themselves. Now during that time, because the Taliban were told you can't participate in those talks back in 2001, they crossed the border to Pakistan and they trained for 5 years. They regrouped, rearmed, and then they came back. And that effectively is what we've been dealing with for the last 20 years. Every time I went to Afghanistan, I did a number of visits. Amazing to see our troops and what they were doing. They created an umbrella of security, and what enough was happening underneath that umbrella for us to then advance the country and win over the hearts and minds of the Afghan people.
Was our training, the training therefore, Mr. Elwood, that the UK and the US gave to the Afghan security force, should questions be asked about that training? Because I don't envy them, but they seem to be melting in the face of resistance now with the Taliban.
It's melting now because we were giving them the edge. Our presence there, which was not huge over the last couple of years, is able to contain and control and keep back the Taliban. Our departure means that they're now stepping forward with vigour, and that means that the Afghan government has lost its legitimacy, its authority. What a shame we didn't have the patience as we did, and I've said this a number of times. After the Second World War, we still have troops in Germany today. We nurtured that country back
2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
He said, that's my tasty motor. You're in the driving seat now, Britain. Cinch. Cars without the faff. UK mainland delivery only, T's and C's apply. Victoria Breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
After 7 calls coming through already, Jake, coming to you in a moment, and others particularly keen to hear from you if you have served in Afghanistan or someone you know or love, your son or daughter, your grandchildren, whatever it might be. Front page of the newspaper reflect that moment. That's quickly let me give you the coronavirus figures and beyond affected stores now as well. The percentage of British adults to have their first 89.2%. Positive birthdays at 75.7%. Number of new infections yesterday, that's picked up a little, actually 33,074. 1 year ago to the day, that was 1,206. Number of deaths yesterday, again, is a high figure, I have to tell you, I'm sorry. It was at 94. Another figure a year ago, within 28 days. So, of course, some of these poor individuals would have died from it rather than of the virus. Was at 7. Condolences to you on the front pages of the newspapers. But it's a split, actually, for most of them. And having occasional fatalities is you think you know what you're going to do, you're probably going to go with Afghanistan, and then you have that Plymouth story coming around 7 o'clock last night. So, some split it. It's the Telegraph's days with the Afghanistan story. Paras sent on rescue mission to Afghanistan. Some Brit jihads joined Taliban, which is a rather worrying line. The British jihadists, which I suppose is not surprising, have now signed up with bomb bank to help the Taliban. The Metro Operation Kabul, which is the numbers that I effectively gave you at the start of the show as well. The front pages of, and I'm sorry, the Guardian also is with Afghanistan. Britain and US evacuate as Taliban advance on Kabul. Dear God, there's a picture of 2 young children in a refugee camp in Kabul because as the Taliban advances, so many people frightened of what that will bring and raced to these refugee camps with a population of about 4.5 million. And this is from the VNF team from Washington, UK, US.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Domestic story for the Daily Mail, 6 shot dead bloodbath. A similar theme for the Daily Mail, 6 shot dead in Plymouth, gun horror. The Times, interestingly, decides to give that on the edge over Afghanistan. Multiple fatalities after Plymouth mass shooting.
Exit at junction 3.
Stories, the Daily Express only way is up. Britain's economy speeds ahead. They pick up all the figures. The broke actually around this time yesterday, which gives us all hope. For
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 3rd exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Britain faces the biggest test for living with COVID this weekend. That's a good idea, actually. The Eye has highlighted that because the return of the I know that other games have kicked off, but the Premier League returns. We've got cricket going on with England, just about, although it seems a rather one-sided affair at the moment. There's festivals, there's gigs as well. Around 1.7 million people are going to be going to public events of one sort, which is the biggest since the pandemic began. So we must wish them well with that. Okay, I mentioned that we need to get your views on. We're going back. We hadn't actually pulled out, the British military hadn't actually pulled out all its personnel. There were, broadly speaking, around 100 left. That will now, of course, be supplemented by an additional 600. Jake's in Orpington. What do you make of this sort of push-me-pull-you affair? Good morning.
It's amazing how we just choose and pick the places where we sort of go into, and yeah, I think it is right for us to pull out and withdraw and get our, citizens out of there.
Right.
I don't understand why we went there in the first place. It's not for us to poke our noses in. You know what I mean? We talk about, because of children and women.
20 years ago next month, we saw what they'd been up to in Afghanistan for how many months prior to that when they blew up the Twin Towers. It was the seat of international terrorism.
If we're so consumed about human life and, tragedies and this, that and the other, then why haven't we gone into Burma, Rwanda, Sudan? Rwanda, 500,000 people plus were killed within 90 days.
I'm not saying you're wrong, sir. The only justification would be that the terror attacks that were witnessed in Berlin, in Nice, in New York and in London were all planned from Afghanistan. Now that doesn't make one human tragedy worse than another, but that might be one level of justification that would be offered. Jay?
Yeah, but the Afghan army have been trained by British, American...
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Weapons,
yes.
Ammunition, aircraft. They've got their own sort of what is it? They've got their own sort of
Military background.
yeah.
Network.
Continue on the parkway for 1 mile.
I know exactly what you mean. Jane, thank you for getting us started on that. Have yourself a safe weekend, Graham and Bradford. Graham, your reaction as the military planes get ready to go back to Kabul?
Hello, Nick.
Hello, sir.
Well, I made a friend with a young Afghani bloke, and he managed to get his mother and his sister over, and his father and his uncle had been killed by the Taliban. He had worked for the British military, and he was a really nice guy, Nick.
Yes.
He taught me how to cook his traditional rice dish, similar rice.
Okay.
And I went out with him a couple of times, and he even had a couple of beers with me, Nick. That's how
He'd become westernised then.
he wasn't a fanatic.
Let me ask you this then, Graham. So you've obviously got a friend there. Is it right to risk young British lives, men and women going back in?
Well, I think we should decant all the people who worked with us and helped us while we were there.
Or the translators?
All the interpreters, cooks, everyone. They should all have sanctuary here, and we should bring them all back and give them a life here, because this guy, mate, he was a sound bloke.
They've risked their lives, they've risked their families' lives, and can you imagine as the Taliban sweeps through, if they find anyone who's helped the UK or the US forces, what will happen to them and probably their families? These are people who will slit your throat as soon as look at you. Graham, thank you for that. It is a tough news agenda. I'm sorry today, there's no other way of putting it, my friends, and we have to stay with that. And there's been a drowning in the English Channel as part, as the migrant crisis continues to unfold, and more people, of course, given the fairly good weather, try and make the crossing. To LBC's Emma Court with the details. Emma.
Nick, we've been reminded again of the perils and danger of trying to cross the English Channel in makeshift dinghies. Just off the coast of Dunkirk yesterday, a boat holding around 40 migrants supposedly attempting that journey started to take on water and began to sink. People fell overboard, and a man who was unconscious was airlifted to hospital in Calais after he reportedly suffered a cardiac arrest. He sadly later died. Several other people were hoisted aboard a helicopter or pulled from the water by nearby fishing boats before being picked up by the French Navy. Now, this of course, Nick, sadly isn't the first time people have died trying to reach the Kent coast. Back in October last year, we saw a whole family die at sea in the Channel, including 2 children. But the number of migrants...
In a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the parkway, A312.
700 people have managed to cross the Channel in small boats this year alone. Last month we saw the UK government pay France £54 million to tackle this. The money was provided to help French authorities increase patrols on beaches, including around Dunkirk, and stopping people smugglers from putting migrants on boats. But unfortunately, Nick, we're yet to see the impact of that, and if dangerous dinghy-type crossings continue like they are, we will inevitably see more tragedy in the...
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
From Afghanistan, another shameful work of the Trump's wrecking ball. Unfortunately, Biden felt unable to put the brakes on the situation. But how is that door swapped in? They were there before he took over. They were there when he left. Well, okay, it's not how British military personnel interpret Jeff, but thank you for that. Jane says Afghanistan for such an outcome. The question is, why did you go into this in this world and it's gone wrong? It's heading for a disease unless we have governments with sense. Okay, thank you for that one. This from John. 20 years in Afghanistan and we're back to square one, defeated by the Talibans with Kalashnikovs. What a fantastic achievement by the Americans and the Western government. How many British personnel were lost there for nothing? I'm afraid to repeat that figure. It is 457. Alright, coming up after news, we move to other matters. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, speaking this month about what will replace or how we return to some form of furloughing.
We can't save every single job, and I've always been clear about that. But what we can do, and what we are doing, is making sure that we provide people with hope and opportunity to find a new job.
And from summer holiday to Sherlock, with Wurzel, Gummidge, until death us do part, and just about everything else in between.
Simply not. What for, certainly not. Because you're ugly and stupid, and no one can see that. If you leave with the room business after, then it'll chuck you on a bonfire right quick.
US self-therapy in Wurzel, Gummidge has died aged 84 in appreciation of her career. 7:30, you're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick. If you are here on LBC, the news is with Simon Cole.
Police in Plymouth have confirmed
lawyers for Jamie Spears say while there are no actual grounds for his suspension or removal, he will leave the conservatorship. And the weather mostly dry in the east with some good sunny spells. Rain or showers in the west, heavy and blustery in northwestern areas. A high of 22 degrees.
LBC. Join me, Andrew Castle, here on LBC. People are very, very angry that they are asked to stay at home in a situation like this, and Boris Johnson wouldn't. The whole thing is now falling apart, isn't it? People are now doing what they wish.
Those of us who have had the double dose are feeling that when we've had the vaccination, we can relax a bit. The Prime Minister himself said we've got to learn to live with this.
I don't know what that means, though. Join me, Andrew Castle, tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player, LBC. More and more people are using My Smart Desk to make smart working even more flexible. It'll raise and lower into any sitting or standing position at the touch of a button. And now
In a quarter of a mile, turn right onto Roslyn Avenue.